Hello everybody, this is Gregory with 5-Minute Catholic Apologetics, where 5 minutes of your time may get you to the divine. Today we're going to talk about how all Protestants had Catholic ancestors. Now before we begin, let's start with a prayer. Nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritui Sancti. Amen. Gloria et Patri et Filio et Spiritui Sancto, sicut erat in principio et nunc et semper et saecula saeculorum. Amen. Here and there, I like to do history episodes, and this is going to be one of those. And the reason I want to do this is because a lot of Protestants aren't that good at history, and Lord knows a lot of Americans in general aren't that good in history, but certainly they're not that well aware of church history. And I think their little 10th Baptist church down the street kind of keeps them in a bubble of ignorance about exactly where the faith came from. So certainly check out the other episodes we have on history. We have one on Crusades. We have one, of course, at the Catholic Church is the one founded by Jesus Christ. But let's just go back in time. So the first place we see the word Catholic being used is St. Ignatius of Antioch. We have a standalone episode on him, and he uses it in his writings. And the Catholic word means universal in Greek. So universal meaning you could be a former Jew or you could be a Gentile. We know Paul preached to the Gentiles. You could be free or slave. You could be brown, black, green, orange, alien. It doesn't matter. It's open to everybody. And we have in that episode on St. Ignatius how St. Ignatius, of course, had other writings. He was an apostolic father that demonstrated his Catholic faith. So we were always Catholic. The early church was Catholic. You see lots of times Catholics will interchangeably use these words, early Christian church. We can do this because they were one and the same. There was only one church founded by Jesus Christ. Now, of course, there were sects, the Donatists, for example, the Pelagianists. We cover this in the Ecumenical Council playlist. But in terms of Orthodox, apostolic tradition, faith, there was one Catholic church until about 1054 AD, when you see the Orthodox begin the schism of the schism of the schisms, and now there's a lot of schisms. But this episode is really going to focus on Western Europe because the large majority of you guys are from Central Europe or Western Europe. All of Western Europe was Catholic. All of it. No matter where you're from. Certainly if you're from Italy or Spain or France, your ancestors converted likely in the 5th century, even earlier than that. We know over in Spain, Theodosius made Catholicism the official religion in 380 AD. So certainly all in the Roman Empire, there were Catholics. But we know like the Visigothic kingdom in Spain, that was 6th century. We know the Merovingians, like Clovis, for example, in France was around the same time. So we know, and then we know that like in Germany, that area was being colonized and evangelized in the 9th, 10th century post-Charlemagne. And then pretty much the last area that got evangelized was Scandinavia, and that's maybe 1000, 1100 AD. But most of you and most of me who come from Europe, you had Catholic ancestors. They all were Catholic, and they believed Catholic things. The real presence of the Eucharist, the belief in purgatory, Marian dogma, the views on salvation, and all the things that we talk about here. They were Catholic. All of your ancestors were Catholic. It's undisputed if you're from Europe. So what happened? Well, arch heretics happened. Starting with Luther and then Zwingli, Calvin, Knox, Henry VIII. Some of you are English. Look, you left because your king had a strong libido. And again, like with all the Protestants, no offense to the Protestants, all your denominations started out originally in a spirit of what? Not obedience. It was a spirit of rebellion. So if you look at Henry VIII, he wanted to have a new wife. So he's like, yeah, see ya, I'm not going to listen to you. I'm no longer married. Oh, and I'm going to make myself the head of the Church of England. So if any of you are English, you came from that breakaway. We've talked about Luther's breakaway before. So again, like all these little breakoffs started in the spirit of rebellion. And so your ancestors, for whatever reasons, could have got caught up in that. And we've talked about in the episode how Protestantism is lazy Christianity. No offense, but it is much a lazier route of Christianity than Catholicism. So maybe your ancestors weren't that well catechized. We know that, in the 15th, 16th century, the catechesis wasn't the best because literacy rates were pretty abysmal. It could have been that. It could have been that maybe your family got caught up in a political thing, because we know Protestantism, and this is something we haven't really focused on, but in the 16th, 17th century, a lot of it was political. And you see why like the Hussites, for example, didn't succeed in the previous century, but Luther did, because Luther got the protection of kingdoms in Germany that kind of wanted to break away from Catholic monarch power or papal power. And so a lot of it was politicized. Certainly you later see the religious wars, the 30 Years' War and all these things like that. So maybe your family decided they can get more land if they were Protestant. Who knows? The point is this. You might not know this. You might think your ancestors were always Baptist, Presbyterian, Mormon. Even the more recent ones, like the Seventh-day Adventists and the Mormons, these are all 19th century breakaways. So you might not even know that you were all Catholic. So my exhortation to you, of course, is you've been in exile. Maybe you didn't choose this exile, but you've been practicing your faith, whatever denomination it is. And remember the word denomination, denom, away from the name, and the name here is the Catholic Church. That's where you've broken away from. You might be practicing your faith pretty well, but it's not the true faith. And the way you're practicing your faith, which is typically with the Bible and with fellowship, is great. Don't get me wrong. We had that episode, What do Protestants and Catholics have in common? Is great. But you don't have the fullness of the faith that your ancestors did. And now with the internet and so much information at your disposal, there's no reason for you not to come back to the Catholic faith. Now, some of you are being like, well, hold on, Gregory. And we had that episode, the number one reason why Protestants have become Catholic. There's such an anti-Catholic prejudice that you've been kind of inculcated your whole life into. It's like, it's unfathomable. And a lot of you believe that your church is the primitive church and that the early Christians believed what your denomination believed. Of course you think that because that's what your pastor wants you to believe to justify the existence of his breakaway denomination. But no, with the internet, you can easily look all the things up. Nothing I'm saying is a lie. And of course, go to Catholic sources, but you're like the prodigal son. Your ancestors are like the prodigal son, seduced by the glamour of evil, as we call it. And now you have no reason not to come back to the fullness of the faith. I've talked about it before, like Protestantism is like a third of the puzzle. Why don't you want the entire puzzle? We have the Bible. We pretty much preserved and determined what books were going to be in the Bible. Plus we have all these other things that you're lacking, that your life would be so much better if you had it, like your ancestors did. So leave the exile. Please do research on Catholic sources. Read the Catechism. This book tells you everything the Catholic Church teaches. There's no secret doctrine. We have an episode on that. And learn the truth and come back to the faith of your ancestors. And some of you have had Catholic ancestors who died for their faith. We have that episode, how it's disrespectful for you to leave Christianity because you had family who martyred themselves many times, fought wars so they could preserve their faith for their family, only for you to piss it away out of intellectual arrogance, especially you atheists? No. So please, you have Catholicism running in your blood for who knows, it could be 15, 16, 1700 years of Catholicism running in your blood. It's in your blood, but it's pride and hubris that's keeping you away. So leave the exile, come back to Holy Mother Church, and of course we will welcome you with open arms. Guys, post in the comments, let me know if you agree or disagree. Please hit the notification, subscribe, and share button. Until next time, take care, God bless, and pray.